The passive voice. What is the passive voice? Look at the examples. In the active voice we say, "Last night a thief stole my car." During the Blitz, the Germans bombed London. The committee has made the decision. The director changed the date, and one of our cleaners found the missing file. When we change these phrases into the passive voice, we change the emphasis of the phrase. Last night, my car was stolen by a thief. London was bombed by the Germans during the Blitz. The decision has been made by the committee. The date was changed. The missing files was found by one of our cleaners. So how do we make the passive voice? We use the verb to be with the past participle to form the passive voice. Remember to use by to say who actually does the action, the agent. My car was stolen by a thief. London was bombed by the Germans. Remember, in informal spoken English, we don't have to mention the agent. Last night my car was stolen. We don't mention the agent when we don't know who or what is responsible. I don't know who actually took my car. Or it's simply not that relevant. After all, what is relevant is that I can't really drive my car now, can I? Indeed, it may also be used to cover up who is in fact responsible. All we know is that mistakes were made during the project. So when do we use the passive voice? We use the passive voice when the identity of the doer is obvious. One type of work group, the semi-autonomous work group, is discussed in this chapter. We also use the passive voice when it is irrelevant to the reader who did the action. It is the result that is important. The group was designed to last for only the lifetime of a particular project. We also use the passive voice to avoid repeated references to the known doer. The hand-washing practices of the staff were observed by 4 members of the nursing staff during rostered shifts. Hand-washing or failure to hand-wash following patient contact was recorded. Leaving the area without hand-washing was considered failure to wash. We also use the passive voice when we're describing a process or a procedure. Wine is made from the fermented juice of grapes. Grapes are picked at optimum sugar acidity levels. After picking, the grapes are taken to the winery, destemmed and crushed in a variety of presses. The juice is then clarified by settling or by centrifuge. Yeast and sugar are added and the wine is left to ferment in tanks. When fermentation is finished, the wine is then poured into clean tanks and left to stabilize. It can be filtered and bottled and left to mature. So is it bad to use the passive voice? No, the passive voice is not intrinsically bad, in spite of what grammar checkers and many writing textbooks tell us. Sometimes we can actively choose which voice of the verb to use. For instance, if we were writing a paragraph about bees and their relationship with pollen, we would write, "Bees carry pollen." This is the active voice. However, if the paragraph were about pollen, we would write, "Pollen is carried by bees." This is the passive voice. They both are completely acceptable. The choice of which to use depends on which emphasis we want to make. So let's have a look at this paragraph. What is it about? In this ideology, the argument used to sustain the subjugation of women has largely rested on premises about biological difference. Society has used the biological differences between men and women to legitimate hierarchical structures of social inequality. Society has traditionally confined women because of their biological function as childbearers, to the domestic sphere and excluded them from the world out there. Does it use mainly the active or the passive voice? The text in the active voice focuses on the doers, that is society, rather than on women, the people acted on by the actions of others. The tone of the text is also much more political and accusatory. Society has confined women and excluded them. In this ideology, the argument used to sustain the subjugation of women has largely rested on premises about biological difference. The biological differences between men and women have been used to legitimate hierarchical structures of social inequality. Women, because of their biological function as childbearers, have been traditionally confined to the domestic sphere and excluded from the world out there. Sometimes in academic writing it might be expedient to use the passive voice in order to avoid naming the doer of the action, so that the message of your text is less inflammatory. This paragraph becomes more descriptive and explanatory. Taking the passive voice one step further, the distorted passive. The ohmmeter measured the resistance. This is an acceptable use of the active voice. Resistance was measured by the ohmmeter. This is an acceptable use of the passive voice. Measurement of the resistance was carried out by the ohmmeter is a distorted passive. It sounds tedious, pompous, and it really is not needed. So putting it right, how do you rewrite the distorted passive? If you find yourself using achieved, accomplished, carried out, performed, undertaken, you are very likely to be in the distortive passive. So keep these words in mind as danger signals. Find the hidden verb. It will be earlier in the sentence, probably in a word ending with ing, chen, or ment. Example: daily measurements of leaf area were carried out by the team of experts. Rewrite your sentence by using either a simple passive structure with the verb which was previously used as a noun, or simply use the active voice. The team of experts measured the leaf area daily. Or, the leaf area was measured daily.